Good evening and welcome to Have I Got News For You, and if you're watching the Sunday repeat, let's hope no one mentioned in the show died horribly on Saturday night. Especially not me. In the news this week, in Crawley, a mother chastises her son for letting off a Chinese banger in the street. In Spain, Catalonian television launches its remake of The Sweeney. And in Suffolk, police warn fishermen to be on their guard after a local trout stream is contaminated with steroids. On Ian Hislop's team, the star of Father Ted, a lapsed Catholic who once said that when he was 5 he had hell described to him in every detail, so many aspects of the show will already be familiar to him, Dermot Morgan. And with Paul Merton tonight is a Guardian journalist who nevertheless last May put on a blue rosette and stood alongside John Major, but then it's not often that Chelsea get to Wembley, Wheen. Round one is the only sensible way we've come up with thus far to start the show, so footage for all, Ian and Dermot. What's your verdict?
Oh, that's the judge. He's an American. So obviously we don't trust him. Oh, she's British, must be innocent. There's a defence lawyer doing a Hitler impersonation. The Mirror, it's the real judge. Anyway, the whole thing is a stunning indictment of the American judicial system. And the Americans, they put this girl on trial in front of a jury, present the evidence, and then let the jury decide, who then take 27 hours and come up with their verdict. And obviously what they should do is show extracts on television to Mirror readers down the pub, who would then come up with a much more sensible verdict, and then we could free her.
Right.
So boo to the Americans and hurrah for us. Particularly with our brilliant record in miscarriages of justice.
Yes, and what were some of the Mirror's, some of the newspapers' solutions that they suggested?
Nuke Washington, I think.
Well, phone them up first, actually.
Ah, right.
And the Sun solution was to show people how to make a yellow ribbon loop. Right, which was to take an 8-inch piece of yellow ribbon and stitch it into a loop.
But the Mirror got a lot of celebrities to give their verdict. Mad Frankie Fraser, one of them, said, she's innocent, she didn't do it.
She used to give flowers to her mother and everything.
Yeah.
She was a diamond.
She only ever harmed her own kind.
Yeah. And what were some of the more extreme reactions from people all over the country?
A chap at Manchester Airport who runs the car service, the executive limo service there, said he wouldn't give lifts to any Americans ever until Louise was free. It's a perfectly reasonable, moderate reaction.
Yeah. And a Cheshire woman who called on motorists to drive with their lights on to show support, which met with incredible response around 5 o'clock in the evening. But this is the conviction in the United States of Louise Woodward for second-degree murder. Stanley Sorby, a retired soldier from Shropshire, told The Sun, "I never saw such injustice, not even in Nazi Germany." Possible overreaction, but a close call. In an outpouring of tabloid emotion, not seen since the death of Princess Diana, the Mirror plastered the story over pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13 and 14. And if you're wondering what was on page 10... Paul and Francis.
That's Tessa Jowell. No one's ever heard of her. Oh, it's Jerry Adams.
No, that's Mary McAleese.
Oh, yes, this is the story that it's dangerous. You can't smoke a cigarette and drive a Formula 1 car at the same time. Very dangerous. You empty your ashtray at 180 miles an hour. A cigarette going at 180 miles can pierce your brain. That's why they're not allowed to have cassette machines in Formula 1 cars. You change it over and it's, oh God, there's a bend, you know.
Tessa Jowell.
What about
Minister?
Tessa Jowell?
She's the health minister responsible for banning tobacco sponsorship. And she announced an exception. She said Formula 1 would be exempt, which is the most heavily sponsored thing. Because, well, her husband, a man called David Mills, a lawyer, was until very recently a director of the Benetton Formula 1 company and is still their legal advisor. But she said there was no conflict of interest here. That had nothing to do with it. And,
It's a good thing he's not a lawyer, isn't it?
yes, it is a good thing. The only reason she could give was that if they banned it, motor racing would simply sort of go underground. You'd have these backstreet Grand Prix.
That's very...
Like in Hyde Park underpass.
Yeah.
And what was the tobacco industry's defence for advertising their products on the side of motor cars?
50,000 jobs depend on Formula One in this country.
Cancer surgeons
claim.
mainly.
Yeah.
And what are some of the other sports that where tobacco advertising is allowed?
Snooker.
Yeah, snooker, darts.
But it was, but it's going to be banned, isn't it?
Well, so
Because Jeffrey Archer came on the telly and said that it was unfair. First time I'd really thought it was fair. Yeah, he's president of
The World Billiards and Snooker Federation.
particularly the pocket variety.
The government believes that withdrawing tobacco sponsorship from popular sports like darts will help promote a healthier image, although in the case of darts, withdrawing the players might be a better way. Ian and Dermot?
That's the French.
Lionel Jospin.
That's
And
not.
That's one of the Clancy brothers, an ancient Irish folk group. Oh, that's the Hogarth roundabout in West London. I recognise that. It's the truckers, to use a rhyming slang, and they've put everything into gridlock to stop the traffic and Euro thing. That was the Treaty of Rome he was burning up there, by the way, so that they can hold Europe to ransom while they get an extra few bob, which they're probably entitled to for all I know. One thing I noticed significantly about World War II, 1939, von Rundstedt and Guderian, the Panzer geniuses, were very, very careful not to pick a bank holiday weekend to invade France. Because if they did, they'd have either been air traffic control, the trawlers, or the truckers would have stopped them. So what they did was they went midweek. And they, I don't know, painted the name of Irish dairy products on the side.
And the rest is history, isn't it?
Was that Liam Gallagher in that picture, the chap with the funny
Yes,
hair?
well spotted.
It wasn't one of the Clancy brothers at all. There were you pretending Tommy Macon was making a comeback.
Well, you've lost me.
Oasis.
Oasis, yes.
We're going
Liam
to give a
Gallagher.
concert
They were,
in
yeah.
Paris. And the French truckers, very wisely, stopped them.
Yes, they impounded a 20-ton truck containing the band's gear. And they get through a lot of it. And Blair's intervention in this?
He's told the French to stop it. Send in the right, please.
He got on to Lionel and he said, Lionel Jospin, as opposed to Lionel Blair, Tony's brother. He got on to him and he said, any more of this and we're sending in Mandy. That's what's going to happen. He'll not have any nonsense, I can tell you.
But I love it when they send in the French police. They send in the French riot police, really tough-looking police, who then go over to the truckers and say, hi, how's it going? And offer them a cigarette.
Didn't you hate it in Day of the Jackal when Edward Fox missed? That was on his side. You know, when he shot the melon, that's it, he's got to go, yes! God, he's looking green today. And then apparently it wasn't the real de Gaulle, it was just a melon.
Yeah, it constantly keeps me awake at night, I tell you. Yes, this is the French truckers who are taking action against low pay and long hours by staying up all night for no money. As the strike gears up, the truckers are becoming increasingly militant with the Channel ports all blockaded, although the French have left the border with Germany completely open. Force of habit, I suppose. And finally in this round, Paul and Francis.
Oh, it's Teletubby Land.
And,
And there they are.
There they are, yes, there they are. The hard-hatted Teletubbies.
And that's Nunu.
Computer graphics.
Yes. Oh, these are some of the things that Peter Mandelson dreams about.
It's McDonald's.
Well, they're the broadcastable dreams that Peter Mandelson has at night anyway. It's Millennium.
Millennium projects. Yes, it is some of the Millennium projects. What were some of the projects that we saw there, for example?
Well, we want to get 4 men in hard hats in Wasteland for the year 2000. That one's done very well.
Seem to have managed to do already.
They've had several things they're building for the Millennium which they're not going to be ready, which aren't going to be ready for the year 2000, but will be ready for the proper Millennium, which is 2001.
Well, so they now say, yes, because everything's going to be late. How many of them are going to be late?
17.
Out of 20.
3, actually, out of 14 are going to be on time.
Yes, well,
You can prove anything with statistics.
-3. There are some you don't know about, I think, probably. Mendelssohn dreams them up every day, these things.
What are they?
Well, I think there's a 20-storey dog kennel or something designed by Norman Foster in the Hebrides.
Do you remember how Chris Smith, the Culture Secretary, actually described how late these Millennium exhibits were going to be?
What are you saying?
I don't know.
Pick a word, any word. I know. No one could be less interested in the Millennium.
And yet incredibly expensive as well, who'd have thought? Sorry. There are still plans to hold a Millennium celebration in Greenwich at the Millennium Dome, or the Millennium Crater, as it may have to be known. Peter Mandelson, the minister responsible, said that its construction was part of a modern rebranding of Britain. So instead of being seen as an outdated third-rate power, we will in future be seen as an outdated third-rate power with a half-finished plastic dome on it. So at the end of that round, there's nothing between the two teams, except me, the scores being 4-all. Before the prolonged ecstasy of round 2, the cheap thrill of our caption competition, Ian and Dermot get this. Paul and Francis, this. And we'll be back to pick their brains sometime before the millennium. For round 2 this week, we turn to the all-too-familiar terrain of our tabloid headlines, so Paul and Francis, the cartoon invasion. What does that mean?
Well, this is the report that says too many cartoons on television. 35% of children's programmes are cartoons. They'll make a cartoon version of this show, you know, eventually. We'll just turn up and do voiceovers for it. Be a cartoon version of you.
Extremely good idea, by the sound of it.
Slightly more animated, I suppose,
yeah.
isn't it?
Slightly less wooden.
That's right, 35% of children's programmes are now cartoons. Far too much, she says. They're not educational enough. They don't teach people the proper values.
Yeah. And who is it that's telling us?
Lady Howe.
Lady Howe, she runs the Broadcasting Standards Commission. And she says in the old days, children's programmes used to encourage the development of children as good citizens and things.
Yeah.
Like Wooden Tops, Bill and Ben, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Very good. Wasn't the whole budget, one specific budget within a BBC department gone entirely on Teletubbies?
Well, the Teletubbies aren't cartoons, and yet
No.
Lady Howe doesn't like them either. No pleasing that woman.
I know, it's outrageous, isn't it?
Traditional programmes like Scooby-Doo, Tom and Jerry.
Pingu.
Pingu? Pingu is offensive, isn't it?
It is.
Totally illiterate penguin.
The way the people of the tundra...
Why can't he talk? Penguin's clearly gone past being a toddler. He can walk around. Can't say anything. Got a horrible little friend. Very bad influence, I thought. That's it. Hanging around in the snow, irritating their parents. Throw him out. Out the igloo. That'll teach him.
I've never seen Ian so angry.
All right, Postman Pat. He's a bore, isn't he? Oh, he's a crasher.
I reckon that Postman Pat and Captain Birdseye are the two dodgiest people on television.
Come on my boat and I'll give you a fish finger.
Yes, it is. It is a report by the Broadcasting Standards Commission. Lady Howe, the chairperson of the BSC, was on the news this week saying the broadcast media form an integral part of the social development of today's child. Quality programming should encourage the development of a good citizen with critical abilities and an interest in a wide range of issues. At which point everyone turned over to watch The Simpsons. After watching several hours of programming, Lady Elspeth Howe complained that one cable channel offered children virtually nothing but cartoons. I wonder if that could have been the Cartoon Channel by any chance. Ian and Dermot, your pithy heading. The show isn't over till the Culture Secretary sings.
It's the Heritage Secretary, Chris Smith, wants to do some sort of synergistic thing with the ENO and the Royal Opera, the English National Opera and the Royal Opera and
Royal
Ballet.
Opera.
And I think it's like, the principle is that it'll put them all under the one roof in Covent Garden, selling what I don't know. But the idea is that while one person's in, the other two are touring. It's the same system as that gave rise to a very large Dutch navy. It's a small country with an enormous population, so they couldn't all use it at the one time. Hence, they had to have a seagoing element of the population. And this is the same idea exactly. And the other thing is...
Extraordinary analogy.
I think you should be on children's television all the time.
also
The
the
amount
same
of history I've
system,
learnt tonight. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely. And the other thing is
same
that...
system as Wimbledon and Crystal Palace, in fact, isn't it?
It's, correct, exactly.
Yeah, almost the same.
Who are the third team? That doesn't matter. Well, what I do say is that...
It is the same system as having 3 sick patients in 3 different beds. You say, all right, get in the same bed.
No, put him in the same hospital.
Good point.
That's a better analogy.
You're losing sight of the main thrust of this is that we should make opera more accessible to the general populace, and that people should be better educated in this country as to opera, so that there will come a time when you mention the Flying Dutchman, they won't think it's in reference to Dennis Bergkamp.
But most people hate opera.
Well, they just don't know about it.
No, they hear it and they don't like it. They don't bother with it. Otherwise, they'd go to the Royal, otherwise they'd go and see it.
It's all actually the fault
I
of
think
John
they-
Selwyn Gummer's brother, isn't it? He runs the Royal Opera House. He was given the job because he made a fortune in PR. So they thought he's just the man to be chairman of the Royal Opera House. And they've had nothing but wonderful public relations ever since. And he was given a peerage. He calls himself Chadlington, so no one can guess that he's Gummer's brother.
Yes, this is the tragic state of British opera. This week, the Culture Secretary, Chris Smith, said that opera in London was dying, then repeated this 27 times in Italian before slumping in an exhaustive heap while applauding. Which chorus of disapproval brings the curtain down on the second act, and the current scenario is that both teams seem adamant on sticking together, clinging as they are to 6. A unique moment now as we enter the odd one out round for the very first time tonight. Ian and Dermot, your political animals are Alan Clark, David Steele, Fionn Jenkins and Max Hastings.
Yeah, well, one can only assume that this is the great cook holder, isn't it? Alan Clark. So what I presume is that this is Mammy Bear. One day, Alan Clark came in and found Mammy Bear and one of the daughter bears on their own and bonked them both. And Daddy Bear is going to take legal action.
He's been eating my porridge.
Yes, I have to
Well, now that you say it,
let you into a secret that that isn't the answer.
No, that's fair enough, right?
No, that's the...
The odd one out is Fionn Jenkins, who doesn't have any testicles.
I'll give you a clue. If
It's
you
about dogs, isn't it?
in what way?
Well, Clark's just been had up because his dog savaged a BBC man. Someone came to film him, and Clark set the dogs on them. I can't remember what his dog was called.
Yes, 2. One called Hannah, after Hitler's test pilot, Hannah Reich. And one after Laney Riefenstahl, Hitler's favourite filmmaker. This is the new liberal, caring Conservative Party. Name their pets after Nazi heroines.
Well, he also had one that died. Do you know what...
Ava Brown.
That's right.
Did he shoot her?
I think she...
Shot herself.
Shot herself.
sorry.
But he didn't follow
But he married her just before she died.
Komm, Liebling, for you. No, it's all over. I have caught it with the German Shepherd. For this you must pay.
He's also been very keen on females who stick their tongues out and pant a lot when he strokes them.
Is it shooting? Max Hastings likes shooting. He's a great shot.
Yeah. Alan Clark needs shooting.
Yes.
And I've no idea about the other two.
Yeah.
Well, the odd one out is Alan Clark, because all the others are supporters of field sports and he isn't.
is pretty much the right answer. Very good. Yes, the answer is that they all oppose this week's anti-fox hunting bill, with the exception of Alan Clark. Also opposing the bill is Michael Heseltine. This bill will destroy communities and destroy jobs, said the man who sacked 30,000 miners when he was Trade Secretary. Fionn Jenkins attended a pro-hunting rally this summer. In October, at the Tory conference, Fionn came top in an attempt by a group of Conservatives to find out who is the most shaggable Tory or Tory wife. They later had to explain to Piers Merchant that this was only a theoretical exercise. Paul and Francis, your at least partly familiar foursome are Stu Barker, Ronnie Biggs, John Prescott, and Alan Clark.
Let me do a Ronnie Biggs, they're going to extradite. Is there something to do with dogs?
In what way?
Or horses. They had the horses named after them, like Ronnie Biggs, racehorse. John Prescott, the racehorse. No, you can't have a racehorse.
Or their own shares in racehorses.
The famous Sue Barker racehorse.
Yeah, there is. Is it to do with criminal convictions, perhaps? Because John Prescott has certainly been done for speeding several times, as has Alan Clark.
Yeah, but what did Ronnie Biggs do?
I can't remember. Well, he was never done for speeding because he always went by train.
Right.
Are they all special constables? Except Sue Barker. And some of the uniforms are a bit small.
I'll give you a clue, which is that Ian was virtually right in the previous
Dogs.
answer.
Well, dogs,
Or at
we've
least
had
the
dogs.
answer to the, yes, you asked about dogs.
They all own dogs called after Nazi war criminals.
Except for John Prescott.
I'm going to give you one, because you're in the right area, but it's not absolutely right. The answer is that they're all owners of a particular breed of dog.
Alsatian.
Rottweiler.
Is the right answer, very good. They're all owners of Rottweilers with the exception of John Prescott, who has simply been referred to as a Rottweiler by Cecil Parkinson. John Prescott was so upset at being called a Rottweiler, he just sat in Tony Blair's front room complaining about it until the Prime Minister clapped his hands and said, "Off the couch." Last January, one of Alan Clark's Rottweilers savaged a BBC employee called Peter Powell. It wasn't the DJ Peter Powell, the dog just responded instinctively when it heard the name. All of which, goofing around doggy style, brings up the rear of this odd round, and the happy position is for Paul and Francis, as they ease their passage into the final round, leading 9-6. Our final missing words round features words that are missing, hence the name, often including as many as a few from this week's guest publication, the indispensable Compressed Air International. Except no other compressed air magazines. So stand by for never what with parts of the human body?
Never confuse a vacuum cleaner.
It's good advice, certainly, but it's not the answer.
Is it make balloon animals? Never fool around with compressed air or
And
put it
with.
And with.
Parts of the human body.
It's never block the flow of compressed air with parts of the body. Next, shock, sensation, wow, what?
Blimey.
It is from The Sun, in fact.
We've got a story. Unbelievable.
Posh by Smiles is the front page headline from The Sun, pushing Belgium destroyed in nuclear holocaust to page 7.
Did you believe that Nelson Mandela said it was the happiest day of his life when he'd met the Spice Girls? Not that day he was let out of Robben Island.
Next, I think, therefore, what?
I think, therefore, I'm not a Spice Girl.
I am a philosopher.
I am against the net. Next, Biggles inspired what?
Lifelong devotion in Squadron Leader Algie Duff Cooper.
It's Sherry Blair, isn't it? He was a teacher. I can't remember his name.
Sport.
Yeah, I know, but those bastards, they've been giving the real answers all night. It's Sherry Blair.
I sometimes think that's how he wins, you know.
You know, when at the time, I think she was having a hard time in her personal life. Her parents were splitting up or something, and he inspired her to greater efforts at school, and she used to run around the play yard going, and now she's the Prime Minister's wife.
Yes.
It wasn't actually the Biggles, though, was it?
No, it was
Someone they called
somebody. He was
No.
a next door AS
Strange,
guy.
really,
Next door AS
given
guy.
that he's a fictional character that doesn't exist.
She could have been inspired by a fictional character, Angus.
That's
People
true.
who read often are.
So that rules her out,
Ooh,
then.
sympathy for Deaton. What sort of audiences are we getting in now?
And finally, what makes you brainy?
Lots of sex.
Yes, is it lashings of sex?
Yeah. Going to posh schools.
No, I can...
Going to Knobs Polytechnic.
I mean, just look at Ian. Chasing girls is how it puts it.
Well, that would make Alan Clark a genius.
which painful attempts mark the end of this pointless bout of human suffering, and the bare facts are that this week's Virgin Air buses are Ian and Dermot with 7, whilst this week's high flyers are Paul and Francis with 12. So to our winners, the chance to light the giant mega thunder flash at the Hyde Park fireworks display. To our losers, the task of going back to see why it's gone out. But before we go, the chance to revel in the joy of our caption competition, Ian and Dermot. What do you think of for this?
Isn't it one of them saying, "Oh no, Father Ted's on"?
There's the one in the front looking at his watch saying, that cocaine should have kicked him by now.
How did you do that with the serviettes?
Yes, Paul and Francis, this was yours.
It's Prince Charles in the year 2030 saying, "Mummy, really, don't you think it's about time to abdicate?"
Or is he saying, because his hands are clasped like that, is he saying, give us a kiss or I'll squash your budgie?
On which, sublime note,
And how long have you been dead?
And which one is saying it?
It's up to you.
All right. On which delightful note, we say thank you to our panellists, Ian Hislop and Dermot Morgan, Paul Merton and Francis Wheen. And I leave you with news that in London, the Royal Opera House deny that they're resorting to cheap stunts to attract more men to their productions. After another stressful week on the stock market, dealers begin to lose their ability to perform even the most basic tasks. And there's concern among the Christian community as the Church of England announces plans to carry out circumcisions. Good night.
An hour of comedy on Monday nights here on BBC Two from 9:30 going potty over pop, never mind the Buzzcocks.